On today's news, a potential botch in last night's Raw main event, WrestleMania return plans for Stone Cold Steve Austin, why Mustafa Ali has continued to be off TV, Ollie's review of Raw, including Vince McMahon joking about firings, fun, and more. Don't worry everyone, I am back now after my week off, so you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button and enable notifications now that I'm here to rescue WrestleTalk.
Support WrestleTalk!
On last night's episode of Raw, which Ollie will be reviewing here in a couple of minutes, the main event was a tag match of Big E and Bobby Lashley versus Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens, the four competitors in the Fatal 4-Way WWE Championship match at day one. However, things may have gotten a little confusing over the finish of the match. After Lashley accidentally took out Big E with a spear in the match, how will they coexist? Lashley then speared Owens too and got the pinfall victory. However, less than a second after the 3 count was called, Rollins had stomped Lashley as he was pinning Owens, so it's very unclear as to whether Rollins was supposed to break up the pin or not. There did seem to be some confusion from Rollins and Owens immediately after the 3 count was called, but they quickly then continued into a post-match beatdown where they laid out Lashley with a stomp on the steps. And it's pretty well known at this point that WWE referees are told to legitimately count pinfalls as if it was going to be a 3. Do you think this was a botch, or was this the planned finish all along? Let us know in the comments because I genuinely am not quite sure. If this was the planned finish, I think I actually kind of like it, but who knows? With it nearly being the new year, it's almost time for the road to WrestleMania to kick up once again, where we'll be building towards WrestleMania 38 in Dallas, Texas. With there being various reports about different potential main events on the show, with Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns versus The Rock being 2 potential ideas reported at different points in the past, WrestleVotes on Twitter has waded in to report something else that seems likely to happen at the show. Talked to a few different sources this weekend and heard the same thing. WWE is very interested in having Steve Austin as part of WrestleMania this year in Dallas. Not in a wrestling role, but a meaningful part of the event outside of just appearing. Up to creative at this point. Maybe he can be the special guest referee in a Brock Lesnar match. It worked so well before. Austin has previously made cameos at various WrestleManias, including WrestleMania 30 alongside The Rock and Hulk Hogan, and at WrestleMania 32, you know, the bad one, with Shawn Michaels and Mick Foley. Though those were more appearances, and WrestleVotes' tweets seem to indicate a more meaningful role for him at next year's show. And speaking of meaningful roles, Mustafa Ali still doesn't have one. Ali was taken off TV in recent weeks due to being on paternity leave, and many assumed he was just still away on that leave, which is why he hasn't been on SmackDown, after he'd started a feud, I think, with Ricochet. Well, it appears that's not the case, as Fightful Select is reporting that the reason Ali missed last week's SmackDown, which took place in his hometown of Chicago, is because it appears that there just wasn't anything planned for him for the Chicago shows. Ali's time off for paternity leave has been and gone, but now he's not back at shows because creative have nothing for him. Talk about a guy who has possibly been the most misused wrestler in modern WWE, pinning WWE champion Daniel Bryan, injured then taken out of the gauntlet match that led to Kofi Mania, almost winning Money in the Bank before Lesnar came back, Retribution teaming with Mansoor. Ali has been this close to having something meaningful in WWE, and it's always been stripped away from him. And now it's time for Ollie's review of last night's episode of Raw in about 5 minutes.
Thanks for your support on Patreon, the Aberration, Michael Abbott. You can get your own shout out by going to patreon.com/WrestleTalk. After WWE booked every single member of their main event triple threat to be beaten in the same night by the same guy, that guy, Bobby Lashley, will now be this feud's main babyface whether you want it or not. Big E interrupted MVP's promo to say that Lashley is strong, he's confident, he's got a lot of sisters. Such beautiful sisters. So then why did he cheat to win last week? Lashley then weirdly tormented his own manager, trying to make MVP face Big E one-on-one to zero crowd reaction, because everyone apart from Vince McMahon wants to see the Hurt Business together. Bobby was jumped by Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, so Lashley and Big E teamed up to fight them off. Sensing the hint of any possible tag match, Sonya Deville and Adam Pearce skipped along backstage and booked just that. Bobby and Big E together? But how will they coexist? This is exactly the kind of lazy booking Luke and I said would happen last week when Bobby was awkwardly added to this feud. At least Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins are really entertaining as a goofy heel act. This was an actual shot in the trailer for this week's NXT 2.0. We might not have your favorite indie wrestlers anymore, but we do have boobs. Just gonna set a reminder for NXT actually. Doudrop and Bianca Belair had their third match in as many weeks, a series in which Doudrop has lost via countout and lost totally clean. But how will Bianca defeat the totally beatable Doudrop this week? Both women are so good though, their in-ring wrestling made you forget their ineffective booking, and the crowd popped huge when Belair finally hit the KOD on Doudrop for the first time. Austin Theory said backstage he thinks Vince McMahon sees him as a future WWE champion, which could be true going by the amount Kevin Dunn was hammering the artificial crowd boo sound effects during his entrance. He took on Finn Balor in a match that has been built for several weeks, and it was really solid. Theory's offense popped, but trying to take a selfie while he was making the pin was a cockiness too far, letting Balor get the win. To make up for disappointing Daddy, Theory then attacked Balor backstage, which Vince told him he likes seeing Austin beat the chocolate pudding out of Finn. Is that a thing people say? I tell you what definitely is, Vince McMahon firing people. As he said, and I quote, or in English, maybe I should fire you. I enjoy firing people. I especially enjoy firing people just before the holidays. Elias right now has just taken a sharp intake of breath. We've actually got a live picture of Bully Ray upon hearing that line. Oh yeah, the heel heat, man. Give me some more of that heel heat. This is where kayfabe character and shoot real life uncomfortably overlap. Vince actually has fired a lot of wrestlers this year. Over 80. But he has also fired a lot of wrestlers in his career in storyline. This totally makes sense for the McMahon character to say, even if you know nothing about the mass releases in the pandemic, but it also feels exploitative given WWE's real-life recent actions. When Liv Morgan brought up Becky getting her friends fired last month, that reportedly upset several wrestlers backstage, who felt it was distasteful to use that in a storyline. Do you think McMahon's line was in poor taste? Let me know in the comments down below, because I'll be replying to as many people as I can for the first 30 minutes after this video goes live. Vince finished the segment saying he's investing in Theory, so he'll give him a rematch against Balor next week. And then he revealed what the eraser on the pencil was for, to rub out what he'd written on some paper to then blow it over Austin like snow, and then go ho ho ho, like Santa Claus. What? Following the last few months of random tag team pairings, WWE is now entering the next natural cycle of breaking up all those tag teams. Miz hosted AJ Styles and Amos on Miz TV, where Amos threw his chair out, a great touch to make sure he's always being tall. He looks even taller when people shorter than him are sitting down. This went right into AJ and Amos versus the Mysterios for the Arcade Bronament final. You remember the Arcade Bronament? That fun concept from 2 weeks ago with custom graphics and Riddle and Orton on commentary. Yeah, there was none of that. Just 2 minutes of Amos refusing to tag in, the Mysterios beating Styles, and then AJ and Amos breaking up, setting up a match, presumably for day one. Randy Orton came down broless to face Chad Gable, who got the better of Orton early with wrestling. So Randy hit an RKO from out of nowhere for a win in a few minutes. Otis chased him off, presumably setting up a match for next week. Dana Brooke and Reggie avoided R-Truth, Akira Tozawa, and Tamina in Hipster Santa's grotto. Damian Priest worked over the ass, Dolph, the ass, in their match next. It was decent action with a crappy finish. Bobby Roode interfered, which brought out the demon inside Damian. A demon which seemingly doesn't care about being counted out and losing. Edge hosted Maurice in his Cutting Edge segment, the second wrestler-led interview gimmick on this episode, where Maurice pretended to be upset so her husband, The Miz, could surprise attack him, but Edge saw completely through it, but got surprise attacked by The Miz anyway. Great babyface. Veer Mahan is coming to Raw. He's actually already arrived on Main Event, beating T-Bar on last night's taping, which, as we all know, is the first step to main eventing WrestleMania. Rhea Ripley beat Queen Zelina in minutes, showing that Nikki ASH really is a weight around her neck, presumably breaking up that team soon too. Liv Morgan robotically recited an awkwardly scripted promo, and then played an even more awkwardly staged cinematic angle, where Liv went to Becky's training camp over the weekend to attack Becky from behind with a kendo stick, while all the dudes around the ring are going, oh no, no, rather than actually warning anybody, because it was all a ruse. Liv attacked a fake Becky. The real Becky was right behind her. They brawled and Liv got the better of her, and the short film ended, providing no answer to the question, but how did Morgan get out of that building surrounded by Lynch and all her students? I'm glad Liv has a groundswell of support, but I think this segment really exposed her limitations on the mic. And in the 139th edition of How Will They Coexist this year, the main event saw Big E and Bobby Lashley team against Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. Do you remember that neat storyline from November where KO was psychologically ruining himself and Big E had enemies everywhere? Not anymore, because the story now is Bobby Lashley is Raw's top babyface. Cheer him! WWE piled on the good guy tropes, teasing a split with his bad guy manager MVP, ironically something that would make him a better babyface if they kept them together right, giving him impressive strength spots like the delayed standing suplex, getting the hot tag and victory after accidentally spearing Big E. The ending appeared botched, as Pete said, but they continued to give Lashley a major babyface angle by having Seth and Owens beat him up with a powerbomb on the apron and stomp on the steel steps in the post-match. All while Big E is selling a spear from 5 minutes ago, probably realizing his WWE title run is just a transition reign from Bobby Lashley back to Bobby Lashley. At least KO and Seth's relationship is fun, it being two people who are famous for turning on all their partners working together. They both tease turning on each other here before hugging to close the show. They can coexist, apart from successfully pulling off the finish. What did you think of Raw? Let me know in the comments. 74% of you voted for, but how will they coexist in our poll on a poll match on the community tab. The can they coexist booking felt lazy, Liv's promo was bad, the show felt repetitive, and I fundamentally disagree with Bobby's booking, particularly how it's making Big E an afterthought. This week's Raw is 2 out of 5. Do you like board games? Then go subscribe to our board game YouTube channel, No Rolls Barred, where Adam Blompier has just put up his 20 best games of the year.
So here we are, stretching our swan wings to make it up to you with a full-blown top 20. There's a rainbow of raucous, fun, funny, social, and devilish games up in this bitch, and even some air quotes proper games too. Get you a list maker who does it all. I'm Adam from No Rolls Barred, and here are my top 10 20 board games of 2021.